The OLED Evo panel found in the LG G1 OLED TV is the next generation of OLED technology. It's supposed to be brighter with better color representation, but the LG C1 isn't an OLED Evo TV. So the question is there an actual real-world difference between the C1 and the G1? Well, that's exactly what we're going to find out in this video. Stick around. Hey guys, it's the Villaman here, home theater enthusiast and lover of all things tech, and today we're comparing two of LG's most popular OLED TV for the year, the C1 and G1 OLED Evo. Now we'll be using some test patterns from the Spears and Montel benchmark discs, but we'll also be using HDR10 and Dolby Vision video in the comparison for a direct picture comparison. And the sponsor of today's awesome video is an awesome game, Raid Shadow Legends. This is the kind of game you can spend a lot of time playing. I'm talking, of course, about Raid Shadow Legends. Raid Shadow Legends is a free gem of a game, and I call it that for good reason. Raid is a game with an abundance of lore and amazing looking champions, each with their own unique faction. And no fantasy world is complete without dwarves. The dwarves in Raid have their own rich history in the world of Teleria. Let's get to know them just a bit. Oh, and of course, use my links below in the description to download Raid for yourself, whether on mobile or your PC. Dwarves, the third race made during the time of creation. The variety and details of these characters make them epic and fit for your taste, whether you like evil looking ones, nobility, barmaids, or sorcerers. New this month, besides the special events every day and the new champions, is the Guardian Ring. This is a huge feature that gives you many new ways to use your champions, including a whole faction guardian system, a new way to get legendary champions you've missed out on, and an entirely new way to upgrade your favorite champions. It has the Raid community very excited. Join the battles in Raid and get a huge head start by using the link in the description or by scanning my QR code. And you'll not only get your very own epic hero, Chonoru, but also 200k silver, 1 XP boost, 1 energy refill, and 1 ancient shard so you can summon an awesome champion as soon as you get in the game. All this treasure awaits you here in Raid Shadow Legends. Now to do the comparison, I'll have both TVs connected to a Panasonic UB820 Blu-ray player through a Denon X4700H receiver. So this will mean that both TVs will be getting the exact same signal, so any differences you see will be a result of the TVs themselves. Let's get into it. We'll start things off with the tunnel pattern to test tone mapping, and the first thing you'll notice is just how similar the performance of both TVs appear, barring the difference in color temperature, which is caused by a magenta hue on the G1. That said, there is great definition in the shadows, but even more so in the highlights, where both TVs do very well. Now let's see how well both TVs maintain their peak brightness using a small window which gradually increases in size. And since the biggest benefit of an OLED Evo panel is its higher peak brightness that it's able to achieve, let's see if it can maintain that brightness better than the C1 can. And as the window grows larger, both TVs see a reduction in brightness at the same time. So the auto brightness limiter is the same for both TVs. ABL is a feature which limits how long the TV will sustain its peak brightness. If we speed up the footage, we can see more clearly exactly when the reduction in brightness occurs on both TVs. Now let's examine panel uniformity using a 15% full field gray screen, and the screen of the G1 is noticeably worse than that of the C1, where not only is there vertical banding evident, but some dirty screen effect as well. Both TVs have the same Alpha 9 Gen 4 processor, so they handle motion exactly the same. Where fast-moving objects on screen tend to be illegible, both picture and text, while as we enable the judder and the blur settings to their maximum levels, then we can see where the faster moving objects are now legible on both TVs, not without artifacts being present on the edges of objects, which is evident on both TVs. Moving on to the other test of motion, the running peppers test, both TVs exhibit judder as the peppers move across the screen. The judder we see here is typical of an OLED TV, and once we enable the judder and the blur setting, the motion improves significantly, where the panning of the peppers are smooth and without judder. Using the Spears & Munsell benchmark this so far, both TVs maintain very similar performance, so let's see how they perform with real-world content, HDR10 and Dolby Vision video. Naturally, both TVs possess that punchy contrast of an OLED panel and the bright vivid colors which accompany it. And contrary to what we've assumed going into this test, the C1 actually performs better on brighter scenes and highlights than the G1 does in this beginning portion of the test. I noticed a strange anomaly during the comparison where in some scenes the C1 was actually brighter than the G1, which is counterintuitive and not what you'd expect at all. So I think there may have been some issue with the actual means of facilitating the comparison, meaning the receiver in the middle. So what I did was I had the same scene filmed on two separate occasions with both TVs so we could compare them directly that way. And this used the same settings on the camera for both TVs, so any differences at all you see will be a direct result of the TV themselves. In scenes where the colors on the G1 don't seem quite as deep or as saturated as they do on the C1, it's because those scenes are brighter on the G1, and that's how the camera actually represents that difference in brightness. The OLED Evo panel in the G1 is supposed to be brighter than the one in the C1, and in the real world that's actually not noticeable. In some instances where they're compared directly, it is evident, but in a real world scenario, and as someone who's had both TVs on the same stand in both a light and dark room, I can say that there's no noticeable difference on a day-to-day basis. The only time you'll see some kind of difference is when they're being directly compared, like in this video. So that said, I think the main reason for purchasing the G1 over the C1 isn't necessarily the OLED Evo panel, but instead the other things that this G1 has over the C1. For example, the G1, the gallery design is actually meant to be wall mounted, so it comes with a wall mount adapter included in the box and not an actual stand for your TV stand, because that's how they intend for you to use it. If you want a stand mount TV, I think the C1 is the better choice to go with, especially since the base price of the G1 is higher than the C1. So if you factor in, say, a stand for the G1, then it's even more expensive. So if you're wall mounting the TV, then the G1 would definitely be the better option, because the C1 you'd have to buy the wall mounting adapter separately, and the design of the back of the TV isn't quite conducive to being as flat against the wall as the G1 would be. The G1 also has a better built-in speaker system than the C1 does, but I think I prefer the sound of the C1 to the G1 because the stand on the C1 helps to direct the sound to the viewer, where the G1 would have to rely on the TV stand itself to perform that task. The new OLED Evo panel has a better subpixel layout where the red and blue subpixels are brighter than they were in previous years, while there's an extra green subpixel added. But in the real world, as we've seen in this comparison, it doesn't really equate to a brighter or a noticeably brighter picture. Color rendition is also extremely similar, so there's no noticeable improvement in that as well. The color rendition is also noticeably similar, so there's no real noticeable improvement in that either. And though OLED panels have seen incremental increases in performance over the years, this is what is considered the second generation OLED panel. So I hope this comparison has helped you to determine which of these OLED TVs is right for you if you're in the market for either one of them. So let me know in the comments what you think about these OLED TVs and which one of them you prefer. Oh, and to switch topics for a bit, I have some home audio videos coming out about all the changes going on in my home theater, this thing right here being the most noticeable change so far. So definitely stick around for that, and stick around for more videos on the 2021 4K TVs. Admittedly, I have a bit of a backlog I'm trying to get through, so bear with me. Oh, and don't forget to check out the merch store for some awesome t-shirts like this and more. Thanks for watching, and until next time, this has been your friendly neighborhood Villaman saying be safe and peace.